Shells Shells.
I'm delighted to be joined by, what should I say, soon to be Dr. Tori Frayne.
Yep.
So what's going on with you? What's your story? Give everybody a little bit of background, including your hair's different. Because I got a photo of you off LinkedIn and it's got you're very brunette in that, now you're blonde. So when you tell everyone your story, you need to tell us what's going on there as well.
Well, I'm afraid I'm a reluctant blonde.
What does that mean?
I'm so grey now that my hair colorist says that she won't make me brown. She completely refuses, and I have to be blonde because it blends in better with the grey.
Oh, well, I guess that's practical, isn't it?
Yeah. So my story is that I went back to university in my late 40s to study AI. And the AI that I developed was in service of helping healthy adults sleep better. And in order to do that well, I went back to Oxford, where I'd done my undergraduate, and I did a neuroscience degree in sleep medicine. And in it, I particularly focused on menopausal women. I did that for 3 reasons. One is, selfishly, I should be heading into that territory soon, so I was really quite interested to know what was up with sleep. Secondly, believe it or not, sleep is ridiculous historically in terms of how well they've researched women versus men. They literally do like 100% men studies sometimes, and they say they did it in order to reduce variation in results. So literally just missing out 50% of the population. So in my research, I was deliberately focusing on 40 to 55-year-olds, and I was wanting to have as many peri and postmenopausal women as I possibly could in order to even up some of that balance.
That's a very good point, isn't it? I mean, before we get into your research, can I be I sound a little bit skeptical, but quite often, particularly if you look on YouTube, you can sort of sink into what's called an echo chamber, and people talk about research this, research that. But the idea are you saying that a lot of sleep research has basically been ignoring women? That's just ridiculous. Is that true?
Yes, large swathes of historic research does not include women.
How absolutely crazy. And I'm sure people would have picked up on you mentioned going back to Oxford. So does that mean you studied at Oxford to do your degree?
I studied my undergraduate at Oxford, yes. I studied politics, philosophy and economics. So doing AI was, after a career in business, was definitely a big change. Doing AI nowadays, it's really beneficial to have perspectives on ethics. And so philosophy was helpful for that. And just thinking logically about what might get missed by certain populations. It's also the same thing, like a lot of times some of the AI issues that occur are because the people doing the coding don't really have the perspective of some sets of people. So for instance, like the most horrendous image recognition results for, say, Black women, because it was white men who were choosing the images, and they just didn't think about women, and they didn't think about folks with a different color of skin, and therefore that's why their model doesn't work so well. So yeah, it really thinking logically about how to make better outcomes for the whole population is I find super cool.
So is that because AI, or rather, the early bits of it, because I guess it's changing every day, was basically set up by geeky white blokes?
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? It's so strange because as somebody like me who doesn't know how these things work, when you look at AI, you kind of distrust it because it's new and whatever, but at the same time you kind of trust it because it churns out all this information or pictures or whatever that are kind of amazing, and you're so blown away by it that you find yourself trusting it. So actually, would you say that AI is to be trusted at the moment? I know we're going a little bit off topic, don't worry, we'll get back onto your stuff in a moment. But what do you think? Do you think AI is something people can trust, or is that just an impossible question?
No, it's a very answerable question. And the answer is that it depends on the use case. So, for instance, I'll give you another example. So breast cancer. They've done huge studies in breast cancer. The one which I'm going to quote was 85,000 women in the US and the UK. And the machine learning algorithm, not the generative AI that's all kind of popular at the moment, but the machine learning algorithm, scores 11.5 percentage points better than a human. It gets it right more often, and it makes mistakes less often. And so, again, I'm heading into a period of my life where I am higher risk of breast cancer. And I really want to make sure that a machine is reading my breast cancer scan results and not some human, if at all possible. So the performance of AI in those sorts of circumstances is an awful lot better.
So, trying not to be too embarrassed about being a man and kind of being a bit surprised about how awful previous sleep research has been, can you tell us about your sleep research in the context of menopause?
Yes. So I conducted a study of all randomized controlled trials that had been done. And there were 78 of them. And a randomized controlled trial, I'm sure you know, but just in case it helps, that is how the medical profession is able to compare results. So they take one group of people and they give them a treatment. And they take another group of people who have exactly the same characteristics, be it age, whatever matters for that. And they don't do the treatment. And then they both are measured after a certain period of time. And the difference between them is taken as the impact of the treatment. So I looked at 78 studies, and those were in the areas of hormonal treatments like HRT, non-hormonal drugs, supplements, and then behavioral treatments.
And what's a behavioral treatment? What do you mean by that?
So a behavioral treatment for sleep is anything which doesn't involve putting something in your mouth and swallowing it. So not supplements, and it will normally be some action that you take, like for instance, hypnotherapy or cognitive behavioral therapy.
So in the things that you looked at, I'm sure there's lots of other behavioral treatments, but did you focus on hypnotherapy and CBT? With those?
Yes, those were the top performing ones. So those were ones I focused on.
They were the top performing ones. So that's super interesting. So I'm just going to play that back to you.
And it's also super interesting for me because, again, selfishly, I'm afraid that I've had a couple of pulmonary embolisms, which means that you're not really supposed to do HRT. And so I was very interested to see whether there was some treatment for menopausal sleep, knowing that was coming up for me, to understand whether there was something I could do that wasn't hormonal.
So you are actually kind of, from my entirely selfish perspective, you're like the perfect person to talk to about this, because you've looked at things scientifically and you've looked at all different areas of research, and you've also got a personal interest in this, in as much as you are really probably going to do your very best to avoid HRT yourself.
Well, yes, the doctor says I can't have it.
Gosh, it's extraordinary. So that's amazing. So you looked at all this research where you looked at hormonal drugs like HRT, non-hormonal drugs, supplements, which I assume are like herbal supplements and things, and behavioral stuff, which appear to be focused around hypnotherapy and CBT. How on earth do you compare those things and kind of work out which one's better or not? It seems pretty tricky to me.
Well, the RCTs are the basis of information to compare. So what you do is you compare the absolute scale of impact on the test group versus a scale of impact on the control group. And there's a metric that people use called standardized mean difference, which means that you can compare all the different studies to each other and see which intervention works better than the other.
Okay, so you can kind of attribute a number or a scale or something that has the same basic meaning to each of those.
Yeah.
Which you can then compare them against each other.
Yeah, exactly. So like 0.2 is a small effect size, 0.5 is a medium effect size, and 0.8 is a large effect size.
Okay. Well, how do they compare? If this was a rerun of a show I used to watch as a kid, Top of the Pops, where there was always a rundown of the top 10 or the top 5 at the end of the show, and then the number one. I mean, is there a number one?
There is a clear number one. So I don't really remember how the Top of the Pops went, but at the bottom of the charts are supplements. They have less than 0.2 on standardized mean difference, so very little effect in these trials. The next one was non-hormonal drugs, and above that were hormonal drugs, which had a medium effect size, so HRT. And at the very top of the charts were behavioral treatments, and specifically CBT and hypnotherapy. And they in fact had a very large effect size. The average was 0.9. So good.
That's amazing, because if you'd said to me what's going to work best for helping hot flushes in particularly in sleep, and if you just said to me herbal supplements, HRT, non-hormonal drugs, hypnotherapy, in my heart I would want to say hypnotherapy was going to do well. I would think that herbal supplements probably wouldn't do too well, but I would just assume that HRT is far and away, if this was the Olympics, HRT laps everybody else and it's won by miles. But that's not actually the case. The behavioral stuff is better.
Yeah, and so you're very right. Sorry, I forgot to mention hot flushes or flashes, depending on what country you come from. That accounts for about 50% of the problems that are experienced by perimenopausal women. And so, yes, a lot of this research had a very high proportion of women who had hot flushes.
So there's two things kind of blow me away a bit, right? I mean, one of those is I've done a lot of hypnotherapy and I believe in it because I've seen it work. It's worked on me, but to see any kind of research where it actually performs better than a drug which is prescribed to millions of people and has been sort of the mainstay of the drug world for menopausal women for several decades, to think that you can actually do something naturally yourself which can actually help more without any side effects or anything, in fact probably positive side effects, is amazing. It's quite extraordinary.
I agree. And particularly as we get older, we often have to take multiple drugs and they often interact with each other. So it's best, if you can, to reduce the number of drugs you have. So I was really pleased to see the answer.
Although I do have a question and I'm a little bit nervous about asking it because I might be shooting myself in the foot. But with therapy in particular, lots of people they like to believe in it. It's not necessarily objectively always super true. So is that the case here? Is there anything in hypnotherapy or the way you analyze things that has any kind of objective analysis to it?
Yes, and that was what I was particularly compelled by. So on hot flushes specifically, there's something called galvanistic skin response when they attach sensors to your skin, and then if you're having a hot flush, you're sweating, and it senses how much. So it can tell you the number of hot flushes you're having, the frequency of them, and how strong they are. And I was so excited, again, very selfishly, to find out that 47% decline at 12 weeks after treatment for the hypnotherapy clinical trials. That's really good. There's no way that someone is able to fake sweating, and 47% decline. That is absolutely what I'm on for.
Okay, so that's something actually physically measuring their body, and that, if you like, is the proof in the pudding that this hypnotherapy works so well.
Yeah, as well as like EEG results and other forms of sleep measurement. But I personally found the galvanistic skin response extremely compelling.
That's amazing. Thank you very much for your time. We've just been joined at the last minute by another woman who would like to say thank you to you. So this is Toti, who's an occasional observer on interviews, and she advises me on the content of my courses and things.
Oh, she's gorgeous.
Oh, she's staring at you.
Hello, Toti.
So Toti, this is soon to be Dr. Frame, and she's just been advising us that actually it's exactly as you said to me last week, Toti. Hypnotherapy really does help with hot flashes, and there's scientific proof for that. So
wow, thanks.
don't you get, yeah, just tangling me out like that. So thank you very much for that. I shall turn the microphone off and let you be on your way. Thanks again.
Bye.